Welcome to episode 18 of season 4. If you just joined, this is Maria from @Maria_the_Arcane on Instagram, and I'm joined by our supreme overlordess, Robin, @Tired Witch on Instagram. And then later, we're going to be joined by Fyodor Pavlov of Fyodor Pavlov Tarot, and we're going to talk about all things like creating a tarot deck, which is pretty awesome.
So exciting.
So very excited about that.
So exciting. If you guys are just joining us this month, we also are doing our Small Business September, and this is the last of our special shout outs. We have Midnight Vintage Ritual stickers, I can speak, that are very cool. It's like a whole pack of Coffee and Cauldrons themed stickers. We have That Massage Witch, who made scrubs and some really cute jewelry. And finally, we have Live Love Maria, who made a bunch of bookmarks. So they're all very fun.
They're very cute.
Yeah, you guys can head to our Instagram where each person has gotten their own shout out and find links to where you guys can get these things, including stuff that we talked about last time, which has candles and oils, and there's new merch in our Teespring and all sorts of cool stuff. So
definitely check out our Teespring because we have a bunch of like Halloween merch. So,
like a ton.
Come on. They're super cute, and I actually bought 2 hoodies for myself, which I will show on my Instagram when they come in. I'm still waiting for them to ship, but I'm very excited to see them and wear them. So
I ordered some of the new stickers that Sammy made. I ordered a couple of them, and so I'm waiting for those to show up too, and I'm really excited. If you've just joined us this week, every week we talk about upcoming lunar phases and how you can utilize them in your magical practice. Now, that being said, the nearest one to when this comes out is going to be on September 29th, which is also the day of our Patreon class, which feels kind of pointed and powerful and fun.
Yeah.
September 29th is to be the harvest moon, but I just learned a fun fact, which is that the full moon closest to the autumnal equinox is the harvest moon, but if it falls in September, according to the Farmer's Almanac, it's technically the corn moon by title, which I think is, I don't know, that's a fun fact. I never heard that before. Thanks, Farmer's Almanac 2023. So that being said, the harvest moon's moon phase, I couldn't have said that any easier, is going to be the Aries full moon. And Maria, as we know, loves Aries full moons.
Yes.
She's a self-absorbed little slut.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But the when the moon is in Aries specifically, right, we're looking at a lot of really I want to say self-rooted things. Not to say that Aries are egotistical, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that we do have a lot of options on our like interior work. So we've got things that are rooted in like self-discovery, working on things like coming to fruition. We have things like putting a fire under our passions, etc. All the things that kind of make our heart full. Are the time, like this is the time to really kind of do magic that is involving that. So I would recommend doing things like some success spells. If you've been working on anything you would like to see like have success, spell work that is involving that. Personal power is a really good theme for this moon as well, which I also just think correlates really well with the harvest moon, because the harvest moon is so close to like Samhain and October, which we are normally associating in general with witchcraft and witches, right? And so when we kind of have this personal power that right before like our big month, I think that's kind of a nice like kickstart, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally, we can do a really good time. Like, if you're like, none of this is for me, you can use this moon to take the time to pause and use it to unwind, recharge, etc. Maybe you're just wanting to keep it simple. This is a good time to ground and recenter, do cleansing if you must. Again, with self, not necessarily your space. So perhaps it's time to do like a nice ritual bath that involves cleansing and recharging and that sort of thing.
Yeah, especially if you're burned out. Like, if this moon is just going to further burn you out, just like, don't deal with it.
Exactly.
But I also, like, in this month's monthly outlook for our Patreon, I put like how this would be a great moon for like, yes, doing the power aspect, but then also doing the power aspect when it comes to sex magic. And
circling back to you being a self-absorbed slut.
Exactly, that's why I laugh.
I have a whole article, by the way, on the Patreon going off of sex magic and power. I have an entire article on the Patreon about self-sex magic involving, oneself and no partner. So sex magic is not limited to a two-person deal.
Not at all. Do it orgy or do it single. It's fine. Whatever fine. Works.
Listen, get off. You know what I'm saying?
But the whole like ritual that I came up with was like basically powering up a power sigil and using also a body oil in the process too, which I put all the ingredients and stuff like that into the monthly outlook. But
that sounds really nice.
Yeah,
interesting. I haven't read our monthly outlook, obviously. Maybe it's time to do some body oils.
But yeah, I think working with like.
Oh my god, my poor husband's gonna be shaking his head when he hears this. He's like, shut the fuck up.
No, he's gonna be making plans. He's gonna make plans. He's gonna make plans.
He's gonna go, no, don't look at me for the next month, you freak.
But I also feel like it's also a great time to pull out, like, let's say you don't use a certain tarot deck often, like pulling out your Emperor card out of that deck. And just like you charging it underneath the full moon and carrying it with you, remembering that, you are in charge of your life. Like you can make big decisions, and just a reminder that, to step into your power each and every single day when you need to. Like, yeah.
I love it.
Thanks. I try. So if you just joined us for this episode or haven't listened to the other episodes so far this season, in lieu of choosing a card and discussing it like we have been doing previous seasons, this time we're going over the whole different sections in tarot. Like we've gone over the major arcana, the minor arcana, and the aces through the tens, and now we're on the court cards. But today we are on the Knights in Tarot. So we have moved past the planning and learning stage with the pages, and now we're ready to step into the role of the Knights. The Knights are all about action and seeing through plans we have made, each having their own method of doing so, for better or for worse. The thing about the Knights is that while they have made it past the page status, they are still relying on others for direction. They aren't quite independent or in charge like the queen and king. They're still following directions, carrying out orders, even if they're their own orders. And they are like doing the footwork of it all. Kind of look at it like this. The pages would be the students, the knights would be the workers, the queen and kings would be the boss and manager positions. So what this means when a knight pops up for a goal is that you are in the thick of getting things done, but you aren't quite at the position where you can use this goal to help others, and hasn't become a long-term sustainable thing. It is still going to be quite a bit of work to get it to that point. When knights pop up in readings, it is time to get things done and to do the work, unless of course they pop up in negative positions, upright and spreads, which means you aren't thinking things through before you apply action, which in that case, it may be time to go back to the page state for a little bit, the last thing you want to do is move forward with a plan with all you have got and metaphorically fall off your horse and be unable to fix things. So, how do you view the Knights?
You know how I feel about the Knights.
You hate
the
them.
Knights are the bad boyfriends of the apocalypse. I say this every single time we pull one. I have a love-hate relationship with the Knights. I think that Maria described it perfectly by saying that they are gung-ho, they're filled with action, but they aren't doing their own lead. And I view them as the bad boyfriends because for each suit, you have this savior card. Oh, I'm going to come in, I'm going to help you with X or Y, and it's going to be active and it's going to be filled with energy, and, you know, it's bringing news and help, blah, 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 blah. But there's actually not that follow through that you really need, like you might see from the king or queen, right? Mm-hmm. The confidence to follow through, the actual leadership to follow through, etc. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like having a bad boyfriend that is going to tell you how you're doing everything wrong, and he's going to tell you that this is what you need to do it right. But there isn't that like follow through mm-hmm. and consistency and leadership to actually like be doing it better necessarily themselves. So I think it's a very cocky suit, or court card, I guess you could say. And it's one of those things that I don't think it's necessarily bad. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I really implore you that if you pull a Knight card, to either pull some more clarifiers or look to the cards around it mm-hmm. to see what the pitfalls are going to be when it comes to Knights.
Yeah, I think that's why that strong page state is so important before you go mm-hmm. into the night, because the Knights are all about battle, you know, so it's like win, lose, you know, victory, non-victory. If you're going in with a bad plan,
1,000%,
you're going to, you know, it's going to be awful. So. And
just because you're the loudest person in the room doesn't mean you're actually correct. And so I feel like, you know what I feel like Knights are? Knights are the social media people as well, that are like so quick to tell you how you're doing something wrong, but don't mm-hmm. actually like have the follow through to tell you how to like do it better. But their video has like 10 million views, like, and people watch and go, well, I've done it wrong, but how do I do it better? That's the Knights.
Oh, no problem. So today I am joined by a guest. Robin is unfortunately not here. She's dealing with a family situation, but that's okay because I'm not alone today. I'm joined by Fyodor Pavlov, the creator of an amazing, amazing, diverse tarot deck that I absolutely love. And you've probably seen it on my Instagram page if you follow me on there. But yeah, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, where to find you online, and your past history with tarot.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having me, first of all. I'm very excited to actually get to talk to you, having, you know, been mutual followers on Instagram for a while. Mm-hmm. So I am a Russian-American illustrator. I was born in Moscow. I moved to the States when I was 13 years old, lived in New York for 20 years. Now I'm in Salem, Massachusetts. And I created the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot deck. Which, gosh, how many years has it been in the world now? I finished it in 2019. Yes, and it was... The first edition came out in 2020, and then the subsequent edition came out November of last year. And yeah, here we are today. So you had asked to tell you a little bit about my like kind of history with the tarot.
Yeah. Like, what got you into tarot in the first place? Like, what, past circumstances or events in your life that you're, like, started to, like, seek out tarot and stuff like that.
Sure,
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, like every queer kid in high school, I dabbled in the occult, the craft. But in that very sort of, I was always, obviously I've drawn my entire life, so I was always drawn to art and pretty pictures and storytelling through images. And so that's kind of the first thing that attracted me to the tarot, because I found a Alphonse Mucha tarot deck in Barnes & Noble, and remain a huge Mucha nerd. So I was like, this is so pretty. I want to, play with it. I want to look at it. But I looked at the images and I was like, I have no idea what any of this means. And you want me to read a book about it? Never mind. And so I kind of like played around with it and then forgot about it up until well into my adulthood. My mother-in-law at the time gifted me a different deck, the Russian Tarot of St. Petersburg, which is a really pretty deck. It's kind of done in this traditional painting style in which Russian lacquer boxes and like lacquer souvenirs are painted with. And so it's a similar style on the deck, and I really liked it. And so I sort of gave tarot another try and started sort of learning to read it with that deck. And around this time, everyone I knew was telling me to also make a tarot deck, which I think is fairly common experience of a lot of like illustrative artists, is everyone tells them to make a tarot deck.
I am guilty of this.
And I was like, never in a million years, 78 drawings that I have to figure out the meanings of each of them and then reinterpret, and no, it's never going to happen. But in a funny way, as I was learning to actually how to read, I started getting ideas for, how would I interpret this card on my own? How would I paint it? What meaning would I want to imbue it with? What do I disagree with in interpretations? What do I agree with? What's my big takeaway? And so I started revisiting the idea of maybe making one eventually, but I resisted it for a long time.
Fair. Like, that's a really huge undertaking. You're basically creating, 78 pieces of works of art for like this one thing.
Yes.
So yeah, it's completely understandable. So is that what drew you to creating a deck in the first place?
So I realized I was about to start answering like preemptively your next question. But yeah, what ended up happening is, because this thought kept occurring to me, I finally, a little bit about my art process too is I don't like big projects. I don't like things that take a long time. I'm very like, every so often I will work on a big painting, and I used to do book illustration and I used to do comics, but the longer I work on something, the more my interest tends to wane over time.
I think that's such a big issue in like the art community, because I'm the same way with photographs. So where I'm like editing something, I'm like, I'm done. I
could never do oil painting, never in a million years, because I would just get bored. And so that was part of my resistance to this project, is like, it's so many images. But I kind of reconsidered, and I was like, well, it's an individual image, and it's kind of like a how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time kind of thing. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna give myself permission to start working on these images, and I'm gonna be systematic about it, in that I'm gonna not pick and choose which one do I like best, but literally just go through them in order as you would get, a deck fresh out of the box. And I'll just do them for as long as I want to keep doing them. And if I get bored and if I get sick of it, I give myself, as a completionist, I give myself permission to stop. And so this became a project that I would work on in my off time. So when I wasn't working on commissions, I went through numerous day jobs during the creation of this deck. So this was always like a back burner project. But I never really got bored of it, because every time I could just focus on each individual card and learn the meaning of the card and really do some deep dive research into each image as I worked on it. And I kept being excited to do it.
That's
and
good.
so 4 years later, I eventually had the whole deck.
I think that's a trick of creating something so huge, is that you have to find some way to remain passionate about it, and kind of making it something special helps instead of just work.
Yes, yeah, it's like a advent calendar where you just open one at a time until you've gotten.
I love that metaphor. That is so cute. I love that. So many tarot deck creators like struggle with deciding this. What was your reasoning for creating a fully illustrated minor arcana rather than just going for the pip deck?
So I have a bunch of decks in my collection that are pip decks, and I would always get them for the art on the major arcana, but then I could never use them because I am not a numerology person. I don't, that means nothing to me. And like I said, I'm a storyteller, and I enjoy storytelling through images, and I've worked in book illustration and in comics, and so for me, having a fully illustrated minor arcana was always like the way I was gonna go. It's easier, I think, to make pips. Not that it's easier necessarily. Depends on what kind of pips you're drawing, right? It could still be very complex and involved, but overall, it's a little bit of a less daunting task to just do the pips. But part of it is I always wanted to have them fully illustrated. And another thing is, major arcana, it deals with like the big things in life. It's very universal. It's very the grand events of your life, versus the minor is what's every day. And that to me is actually more meaningful, in some ways the minor arcana, I think, can offer a lot more insight and explanation for the bigger cards that you might have. So I felt that it was really important to have a fully illustrated minor arcana for that reason, because it offers more interpretation, more insight, and more opportunities to connect with the images, with your reading.
Yeah, I feel like many of us are very visual learners, and so especially newer people who are reading cards, it's much easier to read something with it fully illustrated.
Yeah, it's way more accessible, I think.
Yeah,
it was 100%. For me, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been using pip decks. I'll pull a card and I'll be like, okay, let's try to visualize how this looks like on the Rider-Waite-Smith,
Exactly.
But so your deck features very beautifully done diverse imagery, including queer representation, disabilities, and bodies of all shapes and sizes. How did you connect some of these to the cards, using symbolism?
So I mean, from the start, I often compare tarot to I always think about, in the Middle Ages, when most people couldn't read, church art was how you learned the important lessons of the day. When Christianity was your whole world in Western Europe, for example, that is how you learned the most important story that you could know, which is by going to church, looking at the stained glass windows, looking at the icons, looking at the paintings. Tarot is kind of similar in that you may not even, ideally, what if you never even read the booklet and you just looked at the images and okay, what does this say to me? What does it mean? So in that way, tarot, I hope, should be a universal experience that anybody could connect to. Even if they weren't formally trained in reading the tarot, even if they never picked up a book, even if they, we all can extrapolate something from an image. And if tarot is to be a universal, a tool that describes universal experience, well then hopefully in an ideal world, it should and would be accessible to any type of person.
Yeah.
And so I hope that I could create imagery that would, at least to the best of my ability, would reflect a very varied world and a very different sort of spectrum of human experience, be it across race, gender, sexuality, whatever. And as a person of a very specific background, I'm a human being, but I also have limited understanding of what other people go through based on what my experiences are. And so this is an attempt. It isn't a blueprint in my deck by any means. But it's what I hoped for and what I was striving for in creating the kind of images that I did. But I do think also some of the cards lend themselves to particular interpretations. And the ones that I thought of in the context of this question is my Knight of Coins, who is in a wheelchair. We think of the Knight of Coins as slower than the other knights. The other knights kind of embody this very fervent, very active energy, whereas the Knight of Coins is his is a different pace. And so I thought about like, okay, well, there are people who live life at a different pace through a variety of reasons, whether they are, differently abled, whether they have autoimmune diseases, just any kind of experience that renders you different from someone else. Mm-hmm. A slower pace of life, a different way of going about achieving your goals is what I kind of hope to portray in that card. I
think you did a great job with doing that.
Thank you. Yeah. I also tried to reach out to sensitivity readers and sensitivity people who are from those experiences, and I was like, am I doing this okay? Am I doing this right? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah.
So like friends and I just reached out to folks like online and stuff. And another card that's from a different perspective, but similarly that I thought of was the Six of Coins, which depicts a Jewish a rabbi and a woman and a man, in the traditional Coleman Smith deck, it's kind of like a wealthy merchant and then like people who are of a different class, and it's an interesting idea. But I thought about how like class can be present in this card, but it's about something bigger. It's about the concept of charity, and it's about the concept of giving to people according to their means and redistributing wealth or resources in a way where everyone can give back. And so it becomes, rather than you are giving alms, you are giving something that can go around in the community and come back to you. And so I thought of the Jewish concept of tzedakah, which is like charity based on the idea that you don't just give, the rich give to the poor, but everybody gives to each other according to each other's means, in a way, in the effort to improve and better the entire community. And I was like, that's cool. And I like that. I like that a little bit more than the sort of traditional, like, very more hierarchical class interpretation of the card. And so similarly, I went to a friend who is Jewish, and I was like, hey, like, is this anything? So, and here we are.
I also, like, this is not on our questions, but like how you included nudity on your deck and stuff like that, because you don't really see that in decks, especially decks that have been like recently published. And I feel like, I don't know, we used to get plenty of nudity on decks and stuff like that. Like, even I got a reprinting of Toccato Serafino, I think, a recent reprinting of it, and they completely destroyed the artist's interpretation of the star where the hair was covering. Like, someone went in like with a squiggly line and drew over the boots.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, oh my gosh, that was such a beautiful card. But it was nice also seeing, like confident people, confident within their bodies in your deck. And I really appreciated that.
Oh, well, it's funny because a couple of times my deck has been labeled as like erotic or risque and stuff. And people definitely try to like warn others of like, there's a lot of nudity. I hope you're okay. Like, I've seen a lot of readers kind of do reviews of the deck, and they will always mention like there's a lot of nudity, so if you're make sure you're okay with that. And it's very funny to me because as an artist who does do erotic, straight up porn for a living for a lot of my illustration, it's really not the approach that I took to this deck. It wasn't the intent. The intent was never for it to be particularly erotic or whatever. I just was like, nudity is a part of life, and nudity lends itself really well to certain interpretations, such as like the sensuousness of the Empress, the affection and the relationship, both romantic, physical, and sexual, between the lovers, the world, and like her whole sort of embracing of life in all of its, yes, sensuous, but also just fertile forms, so to speak. But it is very funny that the nudity stands out in my my deck in ways I didn't necessarily intend for it to, but hey, glad we're here.
I mean, like, art, for the longest time, like, everyone did nude art, so it doesn't really make sense that now we're like, oh no, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Anyways, so which card did you create that was your absolute favorite, or the one that you hold most dear?
Well, I don't really have a favorite child, but I have a few. I don't have anyone specifically, but there were a few kind of surprising ones. I've always enjoyed the Three of Swords. I just think it's a very cool image. Yeah, so that's definitely one of my favorites, just because I really wanted to make a juicy, gnarly, anatomical heart, and I got to, so love that. I really like the Knight of Coins. I'm really happy with how that card came out, and I also think he's just super hot. Just like, that's a good looking boy. I love that. And then like the Six of Cups was another one that surprised me, because it was one of those cards that was really difficult for me. I just could not kind of grasp it, and I couldn't really get into it. And so I really had to sit with it and work out, how do I draw this if I don't really connect with it? And through that process, I did really connect with the card and with its meaning, and I kind of weaseled my way into it, and ended up doing a self-portrait for that card, which is kind of funny. And it ended up, it's probably one of the longest entries maybe in my guidebook, but it became a very personal card that I hope, from the personal, kind of bloomed the universal. And I really like it. I like the visual, and it's a reference to one of my favorite paintings by John Singer Sargent, Carnation Lily Lily Rose.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, it's the one, I think you may know it. It's the one with the two girls who have like these Japanese lanterns, and they're in a flower garden at dusk, and they're lighting up the lanterns. It's really beautiful painting. But yeah, that's kind of, and I was like, that painting reminded me of the meaning of the card, and so it kind of ended up working in its way into it.
I feel like that's a good metaphor for it. I feel like there's cards that people like really struggle with connecting, and that's actually the cards that they need to connect with the most.
Oh boy, howdy. You're telling me. Between that and the Hierophant, I was like, oops. Uh-oh.
But that's the Six of Cups, the Star, the Moon. I mean, that's one of my favorite renditions of those cards was through your deck. So I really appreciate, you can tell the personal touch you put on the Six of Cups. So I really appreciate that. But so you did the whole like kicking off the deck first on your own. And so what route do you think is better? Going through a Kickstarter, launch your deck, or just doing a pre-order?
There is kind of no wrong or right way to do it. I think it really depends on each individual artist and how like what your timeline looks like, what you think you can accomplish. My Kickstarter essentially functioned as a pre-order because so I've seen a lot of folks do decks where they will get a decent amount of them done and then launch the Kickstarter in order to fund the completion of the rest. And there is that's a smart way to do it because you want to be getting paid for the work that you are doing. It's a lot of work. It takes a long time, and you want to have some kind of like cushion in order to create it. For me, that would have never worked because I would be so stressed out about how long. Just the fulfillment process alone of a Kickstarter is such that if I also, in addition, had to then be working on the deck, knowing that there are people waiting for me to finish the art, then format it, then send it to the printer, then wait for the printer, all the rest. I oh my God, I could never. It would be so stressful.
I always feel so bad for the creators that do that because you can tell they're so stressed about the timeline and they're trying to do the cards. And it's like, I'm one of those people that I'm like, no, like I'll wait because I know this is going to turn out beautiful. But I know that there's a lot of, unfortunately, impatient people out there. So they probably get a lot of flack.
Yes, yeah, and I think it's just one of those things where nobody really has a concept of just how long this takes without rushing it, let alone, like, you know, when you're rushing it, let alone when you really want to take your time. And so for me, this is why I worked so many jobs, I took so many commissions. Like, this was not my paid work for the 4 years that I was making it. This was for fun, with the hope that eventually it would pay dividends, right?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to have everything done and ready to go, so that the only things that people would have to wait for were things that were outside of my control, such as printing times, shipping times, etc.
Which seems to really been really bad, like lately. But,
yeah, right. And you know, all of that happened for me smack dab in the middle of lockdown and all, like, the worst of everything. So, you know, all told, it's actually amazing how quickly it happened, but I know a lot of people didn't feel similarly. But yeah, so I would say that, you know, I can't really give advice here other than what worked for me, but I think that it is a good idea to really give yourself as much time as possible to let the project cook and let it simmer and let it be as ready to go as it possibly could be before you start putting it out to the public, whether that be through Kickstarter or through the pre-order. And specifically with the Kickstarter, my advice is have as much as possible ready to go, and then just use the Kickstarter to fund the actual production rather than your portion of making it.
So on that note, like, what's the best resource do you think is to get decks printed? I think that's a lot of where a lot of, like, creators have problems. Like, where do I send my deck to get this, you know, made? Like, what was your process of finding someone?
So obviously I know there's a kind of a huge world of both independent decks and then backed by publisher decks. My hope always from the start was to eventually get a publisher. So I had no idea how I was going to do. I had some inkling that it would be fairly successful, and I definitely wanted to do the first print run on my own through a Kickstarter. So I think Kickstarter is a great resource for that, or any kind of funding platform. I think Kickstarter is probably the most robust and the one with kind of the best infrastructure to support creators, at least in my experience. It's an incredible amount of work. That said, it is still, you know, you are basically becoming a single person publishing house for yourself. So you are in charge of dealing with the production, figuring out who your printer is, outsourcing that, fundraising for it, interacting with all of your customers during this process. Then you have to, if you are not shipping them yourself, and I hope to God you are not, because when the remainder of my decks arrived at my house after my shipping agent had dealt with most of the fulfillment, it was still boxes that took up a portion of my bedroom. So, you know, it's a lot of work, and I think the Kickstarter was very helpful to me in that I was able to get it almost exactly how I wanted it, get it out there, and get a lot of incredible response that I could then take to a publisher and show to them, because a lot of creators will come to publishers and say, here's a couple of the cards I have designed. I would like to do the rest if you pay me to do so. Smart. However, I think it is a stronger pitch to come to a publisher and say, hi, my deck is completely finished. It has already gone through a single run that was incredibly popular. There is interest. Make it better and pay me. You know, and that's what worked for me. That's you know, but I understand that also, like, there's a lot of nervousness between independent publishing versus publishing house releases. A lot of the fears that people had around my deck specifically was censorship. So again, it kind of, like, the advice I would give to people is, what kind of deck are you making? Look around at a publisher that you think is a good fit. What kind of decks have they put out? and you know, for myself, for example, I insisted. I was like, there's one of the benefits of me having had a Kickstarter too was there were some questions about some of the nudity and some of the representations in my deck, initial concerns that my response was, well, it's already been out published this way, so do you really want to put out another version that is censored and is not the same?
Yeah.
And immediately my publisher was like, oh yeah, that makes no sense, and why would we? Actually, this is great. Let's do it like this.
Yeah, I think that's really smart, because you run into that all the time with, like, you know, companies that they're like, no, we don't like that. But if you're like, it already works, so
yeah. And you know, sometimes that's not even the publishers. My publisher, US Games, the issue they ran into was, so most printing is outsourced to different countries. Usually it is either China or Taiwan. China has really strict laws about what can be represented, what is considered like risque or indecent or whatever. So they had they were originally going to print my deck in a Chinese printing warehouse, who got back to them and said, we can't do this. So they had to find a different printer, and they found a printer in Taiwan who were able to do it. And so, like, you know, a lot of times, like I said, censorship isn't even necessarily up to the publisher. Sometimes it's the printers that they use that they have to outsource to that they run into these issues with.
How did you find your printer for when you did your own? I know if you don't want to answer this question, it's completely fine. I know a lot of people like to keep it.
No, I don't care. The more resources people have, the better. I don't. Yeah. So I used Expert Playing Card Company, who their offices are based in the U.S., but they outsource their printing to Taiwan as well. And so they have published, I believe, UUSI, that company who did like the Supra Oracle and yeah. So they published through them as well.
Okay.
They used them as a printer, and that's who I literally looked at my deck and I was like, who published this? Where did these come from? And I found Expert Playing Card Company after like Googling and all this, and they were great. They were really helpful. Their costs are, I think, really comparable, and they did a great job. Like I was really happy with the the first edition. There were some things that they simply couldn't do, like Gilded Edges was just something their printer couldn't do because they didn't have the supplies for it. But yeah, I felt like they did a really great job. They offer a lot of really nice options, such as like the linen finishes and all that. And their team has always been very responsive and very helpful. So that's who I used.
Oh, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now the question that everyone wants to know, when are you going to release a spicy Oracle deck?
So with how long the tarot took and what a big undertaking it was, and then what a whole separate process it was to get out the first edition, get out the second edition, I definitely was very burnt out. And I was very, very done. And I was like, I need a really, really long break from a project like this. So I'm my day job, quote unquote, is I'm a tattoo artist. So in that time, I also went back to tattooing because I took a very long break during lockdown. And so that kind of took over a lot of my art practice. So I've had... I don't want to whet any appetites because I don't think this is going to happen for a long time. But I will say that in the Notes app on my phone, I do have an ongoing list of Oracle card ideas and concepts. So I have been making little notes and I have been kind of percolating on it. And specifically an Oracle deck, because I don't think I will ever do another tarot deck. Like I've had people ask like, oh, would you do this kind of tarot or this kind of tarot? I was like, no, I did a tarot deck. Like it's done. I don't want to do another one because I don't really know what I would do differently, But an Oracle deck is exciting because it is you kind of make it up yourself and it allows a lot more freedom. So yeah, I've been noodling on an idea and eventually, maybe, yes.
Okay, well, working on manifesting that. But anyways, so our last question is, have any words for aspiring tarot deck creators out there?
Oh, be ready for the long haul. Honestly, that's the biggest one. I think it's interesting to me that there has been a huge uptick in the interest, like in the occult, in divination, in sort of the more esoteric approach to life. And historically, I think that happens when things are bad. Two things, socially and politically, two things become on the rise: fascism and the complete opposite swing of that pendulum, which is everyone's like, I'm going to get weirder. Everything is on fire. I'm going to get weirder.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that reflected in sort of the saturation of tarot in the world specifically, and more people picking up tarot practice. Literally, I think it's like everything is on fire and I'm looking for answers. So if you are a person who wants to give those answers, be ready to really sit with that project. And I don't think you will necessarily come up with an answer, but you will come up with your answer.
Yeah.
And tarot specifically sits on this weird cusp of art object, thought exercise, and product.
Yeah.
So there's all these different aspects. There's the commercial aspect of the tarot, there's the creative aspect of the tarot, and then there's the like, esoteric aspect of the tarot, of like as a tool of divination, of processing, of however it is that you use it. And so I think that's a big weight to put on an artist's shoulder. And I think it's a lot of ideas to sort of sit with as you create this art. It's a lot of pressure. And so every person I have ever known who has created the tarot has like suffered the burnout, suffered the weight of expectation of future readers. And so I think my advice is to, like I said, be ready for the long haul, be gentle with yourself, make your deck how you want to make it, not from how you think you should or on the timeline that you think you should be doing it. And just know, and I wish I could have told this to myself, and I think I tried to, just really truly take your time with it. And it's and if you get bored, stop doing it. Or if you're sick of it, stop doing it. But, I think it's cool. I think it's really cool that there are so many people trying to interpret this imagery and reimagine it and add more voices to the practice than I think it has had. And that's great, and I wish there to be more of that. Well, so I guess what I'm saying is, I think I said a lot of intimidating things about making this make a project like this, but to at the same time not be intimidated and allow yourself to be to consider that maybe you have something to add to it, and that maybe that you should.
Yeah, I think taking a very realistic approach when creating something of, so many works of art. I mean, it's more than fair to be like, slow down, take your time. Make it your own. But yeah, do you want to tell everyone one more time where to find you on social media or anything else that you would like to share before we wrap it up?
So I am on all the social medias. I am probably most active on Instagram and on my Patreon. You can basically find me on Instagram. Anywhere you can find me, it's usually by my name. So Instagram, it's Fyodor Pavlov, and Patreon, same thing. And then I am on Twitter, which is now X, I guess. But I almost never post anything there. So, I mean, you can find me there if you want, but I don't. Every so often I have a hot Great British Bake Off take, and that's it.
Yeah, I feel like X is now just a giant tumbleweed that no one's really on anymore.
I literally only got one so that I could lock down a username and then just let it.
Fair. Did the same. Yep. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us. It was an amazing conversation, and we'll talk to you offline.
Thanks so much for having me. Bye.
So, Robin, What is stirring your cauldron right now?
You need to not look me directly in the eye when you ask. It's like very much so giving power.
Thanks. It's that Aries full moon heading our way.
Oh my god. Thank you for asking.
Oh, you're so welcome.
It is apple season, bitch. It's apple season, baby. You know how delicious the Fuji apples taste right now? It might have something to do with other things going on in my life presently. But
I'm a Honey Crisp girl. So.
Yes. Yeah, I'm also a pink lady bitch, okay?
Oh,
but
yes,
I took a bite of a Fuji apple, like from a farm, local. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is the most delicious thing I've ever eaten in my entire life. I had 4 of them because I was just like, well, this is great. I am living for apple season right now. And I don't know what's going on. But I am living for it. 12 out of 10. Everybody go out and get some apples, eat them, make magic with them, make magic and then eat them. I also really recommend peeling the skin off. Mm-hmm. Dicing it, like in little cubes, okay? Mm-hmm. Putting a little bit of apple pie spice on it, just a little bit, and shaking it up and eating that. Oh, thank me later. It's so good. Like, just a little bit. Just enough to, like, give you that nutmeggy, cinnamony addition to your apples. Oh. Like, yeah, you can take it this step further and bake it, but, like... #lazy. Why do that when you could just enjoy it fresh?
Yeah. And
it's got that crisp. Oh.
Apple spills are so much fun too. And tis the season.
Tis the season.
Yeah. I think we actually have a apple spill on our Patreon for the autumn equinox, which we turn like
I think you're right.
into little pentacles.
Yeah. And I have a video, I'm pretty sure, on my Instagram from last Christmas that involved apples and oranges and making like protection garlands.
Cute. We love
delicious.
them.
Apple. We love you, apples. So, Maria, what's not stirring your cauldron this week?
Oh, I'm gonna tell you. Okay. So, we're in witch season, and we're in the thick of it.
Presently, now?
Yeah, we're in the thick of it. Moment? And I feel like I talk about this every year. It has to be every year.
It's not you, me. So
I feel like, people are trying to get their witchy posts off the ground. Mm-hmm. Like they're trying to speak from an authoritative place. Like they know everything. And they... like just people who right now they're speaking in sureties, like they know everything, like everything that they say is 100% true, and that there's no room for other different types of opinions. And I don't know, we see it everywhere right now, like with how to use plants, with how,
which
like
blood types.
Oh.
Fucking insane.
But I don't know, like these type of things really make witches feel like they can't practice how they want to practice, and they feel like they're doing everything wrong, and then they end up just stop practicing, especially newer witches, because they feel like they're not doing anything right, or something doesn't resonate with them but something else does, but they heard from someone that just because it resonates with them they should not do it because of XYZ. But XYZ was read about in one single book by, let's say, written by like a single philosopher, when there's billions of different magical philosophers out there who have like different opinions and stuff like that. It's not just from that one book, from that one person. And I don't know, just be careful, witches. Be careful who you get your information from. If anyone, even if Robin and I speak in sureties, which I'm sure we do,
I don't. I'm perfect. I've never made a mistake in my life. And if you think I have, wrong.
But it really is like we're coming from a place of our own experiences and our own like research and stuff like that. That's all that we can give you, like our own experiences and from our own research. And anyone who tells you, hey, you're doing this wrong because I read it in this one place, or this is my experience, they don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea what they're talking about. And then eventually they will change their mind. Well, maybe change their mind. They might not, but but I think even we are allowed to like change our opinions and stuff.
1,000%.
So,
the thing is that witchcraft is a craft, and a craft that goes on for the duration of your life in a lot of cases. And so, just like anything, your craft can evolve. Because you're a human being whose life experiences change, your opinions change, your outlooks change, and
that's why we should never speak in assurities and remind people that, you know,
I mean, unless I'm saying it.
Yeah. I mean, the Supreme. The Supreme.
I've never said anything wrong in my life.
No.
Nothing I've ever said has ever been incorrect. It's a burden I have to bear.
But I hope I didn't ramble too much during this part. But like I was going back and forth on what to say about this, and this what has not been stirring my cauldron for like a whole week. It just has gotten so bad.
Yeah.
You take a look.
No, I think that's valid.
In the last 7 days.
You are valid, Queen.
Thanks.
If you've just joined us this week, every week we talk about shops that we are loving right now. Well, shops, creators, photographers, artists, bloggers, podcasts, forget whatever. These are not paid for ads. These are just stuff that Maria and I are finding organically that we are vibing with and thought you guys might like as well. And this season we have started incorporating a listener submission as well. So if you are somebody that has found somebody that you're like, they're so cool, they should get a shout out, send us a DM. No promises that we'll get it on the show, but we will do our best to get to as many as possible. So that being said, Maria, who are you digging this week?
So I recently got sent an Oracle deck, and I don't know, I've always been, ever since Tarot of Mystical Moments, which is my all-time favorite deck, with collage art, I've been really into collage art decks, and this is one of them. Did I mention the name? Did I mention it?
No, I don't think you did.
It's Unlocking the Secret Garden Oracle by US Games. And I don't know, it's just a really cute deck, and it involves, of course, as I said, collage art, and it has that like antique-y vibe that I really like, and the cards are really well made. It even has like the gold on the sides of the deck. I don't know, but US Games
it honestly sounds like it's hitting every single one of your boxes.
I know. Well, like US Games have been like knocking it out of the park with their decks lately. Like the really card stock is really amazing. The boxes are really good. And I don't know, like I feel like it would be a great companion deck with the WITCH deck that they released. But that is also Oracle decks, so you'd be like layering Oracle decks, but I don't see the problem with that. But they're really cute, and I recommend looking at them. So yeah, who have you been loving?
I am loving, so this is like not witchy, but it is for people who like to cook. So I guess you could make it witchy. This is like a budget thing, and you know how I feel about budget stuff. Okay, we're balling on a budget always. Okay, so I found this creator on Instagram called Chloe Vegan, and like it is vegan. Obviously, I'm sure you can modify it if you're not vegan and you're just like so opposed to using vegan food. I don't know why you would be, but hey, that's your life. Anyway, she's got a series that are called $2 dinners. And it's like, we've made a couple of them and they've been good, like really, really good. And they are like $2. And I think it's been like 3 at a push for us because we're feeding 2 grown adults and a toddler. But like a $3 dinner, 12 out of 10.
You're gonna have to show me, because I'm like, how? In this economy?
So like, for example, one of my favorite ones that I made of hers was a sweet potato curry. It literally took one sweet potato, a can of beans. It was like one sweet potato, a can of beans, a cup of like non-dairy milk, and then seasoning. And like it sounds so simple, but it was delicious. It was delicious. It was so good. We chose to pair it with rice, but like you could just have it on its own. I think she suggests it with bread, but it was so good. So it's like she's just using really, really simple ingredients, and I'm like, yeah, 12 out of 10, delicious.
That sounds like fun. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, and then we have our listener choice sent in, and this creator is called Madeline Handcrafted. Specifically, what we got sent was a pair of really, really cute earrings that are like fairy wings. I mean, that's the only way I can think of describing it. But she does like a bunch of really cool stuff. There's like dark fairy wings and like mushroom earrings, and it's just like very like if you're into like cottagecore, very like medieval, very like high fantasy.
High fantasy.
I really like it. It's so cool.
I really like the iridescent like butterfly wing earrings.
Me too.
They're very pretty.
It's stuff like this that makes me wish that I had normal ear holes.
Well, you should do what Mint Fairy does. She just puts it underneath her gauge.
Yeah, but the problem is that I've got like sensory issues with that. I do not care for it.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a problem. But it's very, very cool. And yeah, if you're into that stuff, I think Ren Fair is still happening some places. So get the heck out there. Get some cool fairy wings. Why not?
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that we will see you again on Friday, September 29th for our Coffee Talk episode, or on October 6th for our 19th episode of Season 4. You can keep an eye out on our social media or head to our website, coffeeandcauldrons.com, to find out more information and see what we are up to.
And additionally, our Patreon Magical Beginnings offers our special 25-minute Part 2 episode, a huge library of articles about witchcraft, a Discord community full of fun events and discussions, and we even have a tier that offers one-on-one conversations with Robin and myself.
Yeah. So please, if you love our sexy, sensual, just chef's kiss voices, take a moment to review us on whatever streaming service that you are tuning in from, such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We love reading your reviews, and rating us with 5 stars helps us to be seen by others. Thank you to everybody who already has and everybody who will, and a special thank you to all of our Patreon members.
So again, this is Coffee and Cauldrons
with Robin from At a Tired Witch on Instagram.
And I'm Maria from @Maria the Arcane on Instagram. You ready?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.